grounded athlete, he's in the house. Dude, you went viral like 6 or 7 months ago with that ad. That was insane with the Tupac in the background.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Were you feeling like this one's gonna pop?
No, it usually the ones that I don't think are gonna like
Yeah.
pop. But I mean, it was just I thought it'd be funny, and it ended up being a lot more funny to people than I thought it would. And usually, like that's how it goes. It's like the things you're not really expecting to get
Yeah.
pop.
I think
So
that's the one that like it just like showed up recommending your feed. They're like, you should look at this one. This was going off the charts. And then I think I reshared it and I was like, this dude gets a follow for that one. Um, Grounded athlete. We're going to talk a lot about grounding today, being in touch with the Earth's natural surface. We're going to talk about Rob's entrepreneur business. There's his background. Are you still in South Dakota?
I'm in Iowa right now. My reservation that I grew up on is in South Dakota.
Yeah, I was doing a little your Lakota tribe, which is a subdivision of the Sioux, I believe, if I got that right.
Exactly.
A lot of history there, like
Yeah.
fighting the fucking man and the government. Like I was just reading up on that. How's like the health of the tribe? Are you connected to the history of it? Was that something part like I'm not like me and Allison, I don't think we don't have our heritage background. We're just straight up American.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like with like no attachment to our motherland or the generations that came over.
Yeah.
Is that
I
more?
still have a lot of family on the reservation in
Yeah.
Rosebud, South Dakota. It's a Rosebud reservation. Like where my last name comes from, Iron Shell comes from Chief Iron Shell, and that's just how I got my last name. That just turned into our last name. But I have a ton of family that still lives out there, and it's going to vary with each reservation, with each tribe, but some tribes are better off than others. My tribe, my reservation is not like a super nice place. They don't have a lot of money and there's not a lot of opportunity out there.
Mm,
So I don't go back there too often anymore unless it's like a family thing or some kind of event that we hold on the reservation. But yeah, it's not the nicest place to live or I appreciate going up there because the culture was very rich. I got to learn a lot of things about my ancestry and the line of chiefs that was in my family. But other than that, it's not the greatest place to be. I'm glad my mom decided to kind of move us off the reservation to more of like an Iowa public school. And that's where I went to middle school and high school and college and all that. But yeah,
yeah.
that is where I come from. That is my heritage. So
Yeah. Um, I mean, Iron Shell's kind of badass too, yeah, as you integrate into the wider society. So, interesting heritage. How did you participate now in track and MMA, I believe? Were you just one of the naturally fast kids in school, and you're like, this is the sport that I'm going to take to? And you ran in college, I presume.
yeah, yeah. And surprisingly, even up till like the end of high school, I wasn't that fast. It wasn't until like I really got to like school, like college, when I was doing all that, that's when things started to peak for me a bit. But no, I wasn't really like one of those innately like gifted people. Like I just had it right off the bat, which is like kind of cool because I can inspire other people that you can develop these things like speed up to a certain extent and you can develop it pretty significantly like I have in myself. But yeah,
Huge
I
in
wasn't,
huge
yeah,
in
I was
Ellison's field.
for sure, for sure. And sprinting it is a lot of it's genetics, but a lot of it is skill too. Like if you can develop the skill, then you can certainly run fast. So
Yeah. How'd you and you're participating still? Like
yeah, I run the
amateur.
400. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
amateur.
400 is
I
really serious. Like
yeah.
that.
I ran professionally for a year and I was kind of traveling all around the country and doing that. And then I had a hamstring injury kind of debilitate me for a bit. And that is kind of what led me into grounding a little bit is I stumbled upon this podcast one day and they were talking about it and I started implementing it and I really saw some huge gains as far as my recovery and my performance. So that kind of got me hooked. So
Yeah, a couple of things there from Allison is we talk about all the time, like the prodigies Tiger Woods, for example, is the one she always brings up, are rare. But the people like Roger Federer didn't pick up his sport till very late and then developed. And it's
Specialized, right? Like, so he played it, but it was played everything and was
yeah,
great.
he had a very wide, comprehensive base,
Mhm.
and it allowed him to develop optimally,
Mhm.
and then excel into his sport. So that's cool. And then you just picked up MMA on the side because
Yeah, for sure.
you have that gene. I just picked up boxing like at 40, so like I understand, but I also am like, what the fuck. Um, so that's cool. So yeah, sprinting and track work is something. Obviously, the feet are very important. Allison has educated me over the years on, and you see this trend in weight rooms, just training barefoot, sprinting barefoot, working on natural surfaces. Musculoskeletal, that makes a lot of sense because your shoes are protecting you, overprotecting you from utilizing the muscles that start the kinetic chain and all the reactions up into the body. But some of these secondary benefits in grounding, which is like become your expertise, um, it's a very niche thing. And I was like, how much can one? And I know you're back on your podcast tour. How much like one can talk about it and educate the market and bring it where there's studies out there, but not too many peer reviewed. There's a lot of testimonies, a lot of anecdotal, a lot of success stories, but how much can one say the same thing over on something so basic and simple to educate the market on this topic of grounding? Um, how you stumbled on it into a podcast. Like, how did you get to the rabbit hole? Why are you so attached to this one little niche? Like how does that manifest itself out into like how into your business today?
Yeah. And yeah, this is definitely a topic I can just talk hours and hours and hours and for because it's the implications of it are just so vast. And I didn't realize that at first, but yeah, going back, when I stumbled upon that podcast, I was looking at it from more of a performance side of things, like recovery and all that. And then I started to dive a little bit deeper and I realized, kind of the broader implications of it, how much it really was this kind of universal regulating factor for all living organisms on this planet. That was kind of a breakthrough like in my head. And I became obsessed at that point and I was like, how I need to figure out a way to spread this message to more people because it is quite heartbreaking that such a powerful practice, such a healing practice is not known by as many people, by everyone today. This very simple thing, this very free thing. And kind of going back to what you said earlier, that there's not a ton of studies on it. And I don't know if there ever will be a ton of studies on it because it is a free thing. What do you need to fund studies? You need a lot of money to fund studies. And the people that are funding studies, they usually want to sell things. And so, all these studies that are done on grounding, they're very promising and they're very cool, but I don't know if they'll kind of ever really get to that point where we're getting a ton of peer-reviewed studies on how grounding affects the various physiological systems in your body. But yeah, it is, but it does make sense from more of a common sense point of view, like electrical connection to the earth. That's yeah, and I wanted to, so how I got started is I was basically learning about this practice. I became obsessed and I was making like these long format videos for people in kind of a digestible format. And now here I am. I'm still talking about it. I'm still learning things about it. I'm still learning things about the body. But it is kind of a never ending rabbit hole for me. And the more I learn about this process, the more I learn about the body and the underlying physics. It's just like the less I know. And I'm sure you hear that a lot in people that
For
are kind
sure.
of very deep in their field. So, but yeah, it's been a very rewarding and inspiring journey. So,
Yep.
I mean, I
Go
know,
ahead, Al.
yeah, in well, from a rehab side, from my perspective, like even just like in the warm up, like some form of proprioception or waking the sensory system is started at the foot for a lot of people. And I don't think, I can go down the rabbit hole with people and, a joke in my house is if Aaron's like, my thumb hurts and it's not my foot is everlasting. It's like, like, oh, this hurts. I'm like, well, and he's like, well, no, it's not my foot. I'm like, I don't know. Like it could be, let's, okay, I'll look at that, but we're still going to talk about your feet that don't move and you need to be able to walk barefoot. So let's talk about that. But, I think, the rabbit hole I start to go on, number one gets down to how the foot is really what has pushed us forward in the evolutionary cycle, right? And if you start to look at people's feet, you don't have to be obsessive, but just start to look at people's feet and just see how dead they are. And then, peel back the layers and look at our overall brain health in our society. Like the foot is what is a major factor in children. And I don't know if there's peer-reviewed studies. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole, but stimulating the foot is a major part of obviously walking and locomotion, but then also of brain development in children and in our society. So, I think ignoring it in any type of rehab setting or in health is tough and it's just not well understood. But my kids might have 3 young children and, I can remember back when is even when there were 2 or 3, like we have a rocky driveway, like they're out there barefoot and the rocky driveway and they're not even flinching. They can run across it. They can go up and down it. I make a point to just walk on my rocks a little bit and as long as it's safe and not going to shred my foot. And, I remember my mom even just being like, oh my God, you gotta put shoes on them. They're going to get hurt. And I'm like, they're not going to get hurt. And we've gotten so protective of our feet getting hurt. It's wild in any setting to kind of peel that back and be like, no. Those are really important for you. They need to tell you things. They need to give you feedback. They need to move with the ground. Like that all impacts everything up. Yeah. And in the health field, we struggle because for, a long time we go like hips and core down and then we go feet up and then, but I think you need both. So this is, very intriguing to me for sure. I don't know. What has your reading brought you obviously to the cognitive function, the brain health, the evolutionary side? Like that's what made us start to go faster and stand up is our foot. And then when people lose that, what do? They start to look like apes again, being my blunt self, like they do, like your feet turn out, we walk like this, and that's not human, that's ape-like. Human is this way, yeah, so interested in some of that stuff, evolutionary stuff and cognitive function. Where have you gone?
Yeah, certainly the biochemical or the biomechanical implications of wearing super cushioned shoes, very unnatural footwear, and what that does to the body over a long period of time is definitely overlooked. And it's kind of sad to like look around, you see all the different types of shoes and all the different types of cushion that these shoes offer and how it's just you try and imagine people, you try and in your head remove that shoe from the bottom of that person's foot and try and imagine them walking and how much that shoe is altering their natural gait, and to not think that doesn't have some kind of negative repercussion is just like insane to me. But
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, trying to do Bulgarian squats without shoes has become a real chore. So yeah, so the motor like that, I'm sure like as you were exploring the rehab portion and the training and you stumbled on grounding. So obviously the rehab is musculoskeletal and all this stuff that Allison's talking about and evolutionary, but then you stumble onto this other secondary benefit, and maybe it's primary, but we're calling it secondary today. It's like, geez, I'm feeling more energetic. My recovery seems better, and it just happened the fact that you stumbled upon this. So, where did that take you with grounding that kind of led you where you are today?
So when I heard that podcast, I was naturally very skeptical. I was kind of like, this sounds like bullshit. Like, it just sounds like kind of a more of a hippie thing, like being, some pandering and stuff like that. But I was like, okay, I was open to it. I was like, I'll start integrating this into my training sessions, and I'll start sleeping grounded, and I'll see what happens over a couple months. And I noticed immediately I was just sleeping so much better. My training sessions were going so much better. Normally after my training sessions, when you're at like a 90 to 100% kind of training session, as far as sprinting goes, the next day you're kind of shot. And when I was doing this, when I was warming up grounded, when I was cooling down grounded, when I was taking off my spikes in between repetitions, grounding, and then going back into spikes, just like the next day, I felt great. I felt like I could come back and I could repeat the same session. So from there, I started to think, okay, there's definitely something here. And then I noticed, obviously sleep is a big part of that too. I was getting much better sleep. I was recovering better, because a big thing that I dealt with throughout my entire track and field career is injuries. Like, I would always end up with these either foot injuries, some kind of like stress fracture with the spikes and all that, or hamstring injuries. And I wanted to figure out, what I could do to kind of mitigate this. And, the performance side of grounding is one of the first things that I looked into. And that kind of led me down more towards like the immune side of grounding. But, what I found out was happening is that essentially when you're training grounded, when you're recovering grounded, well, particularly when you're training grounded, you're essentially blunting your immune response. And so the immune cells that kind of activate in response to training, they're not as significant. So, and someone could retort to that. It's like, well, you want inflammation and you want kind of this breakdown of the body because that's how your body grows and all that. But my whole idea with that is that how we train today, how we exercise today in an insulated state, this very unnatural state, we experience more inflammation, more breakdown in the body than what is necessary in order to progress and adapt in our sport. And then from there, I started to go down more the immune rabbit hole with grounding. And then, further beyond that, you have cardiovascular and nervous system benefits and all these different things. But that's kind of how I initially got started with.
I think somebody that's skeptical, just from anecdotal logical sense, like the more urbanized the country gets, the more that we're in front of screens, the more we're sitting. If nothing else, just taking that time to connect with nature, get the natural sunlight, have your feet on a natural surface. If nothing, just like it's almost a form of meditation. And then, so like even if somebody's skeptical, you could be like, this is still, even if you don't believe in grounding, this is still good for you. And then look at all, then you can, that kind of is like the gateway to people who are skeptical. So, I'm very much this way with cold plunges. Like the studies are kind of like split, and depending on when you do them, and there's like all I know is, dude, when I do them, I feel better.
Yeah. And that's, a huge gauge for people. How does it make you feel?
I feel amazing after I do these. Yeah. Well, I feel amazing when I'm running on grass or I'm like, my feet are in the sand on the beach.
Mm-hmm. Right. But, the other side of that is take a 50-year-old who at age 20 was put in orthotics and never came out of their shoes. Like there's a whole different side to this where it's disastrous when they're out of their shoes versus therapeutic. So telling people, I'll have people, that have been in orthotics since they were 14 and then you look at their feet, there's no muscular buildup, there's no callousing, there's nothing that has made the foot evolve with their body. And so when they put their foot on the ground, it fucking hurts and it's not fun to walk. So they might not want now to walk. So, that comes down to the graded exposures and, getting them to buy in and understand or whatever. Spiky balls or different surfaces or rubbing your feet on things or, this whole desensitization to the neural system has to come into play. So they're not fighting it, so I think, feet are extremely sensitive. And once we lock them up and make them not that initial contact to the ground, unlocking that isn't simple.
It's like
You know,
Shawshank Redemption when he said the old guy committed suicide after he got let out because he couldn't handle the real world. He's like, he's been
it's hard.
institutionalized.
I
He's
mean,
been
and people's feet
institutionalized.
are mangled without having to had injuries, right? Like toes
Yeah,
are different ways and they're up and they're down and they're,
right.
okay, we should flatten a little bit as we go, but like it's feet are nasty.
So
Like there's a lot of stuff that's happening with
what
them.
yeah, what's interesting about grounding is it's not necessarily doing training, right?
Right.
So it could be a gateway drug to re-expose somebody
For
to
sure.
that's been in their foot's been institutionalized, right? It's like, hey, all you got to do is just stand on the Earth's natural surface, do some deep breathing, and take it in, right? Like
You're,
that.
yeah,
That's
you're definitely like knocking two birds out with one stone right there. You're developing foot strength, and you're also getting all the cool benefits that come along with grounding. And kind of like to touch on what Ali said, when people spend their whole lives in these type of shoes and then they come out of it all of a sudden, that can be somewhat disastrous for a lot of people. And so like, what I always tell people when they're switching over to like footwear like mine, I'm just like, don't just like jump into them. Like it takes a while to develop that kind of strength for your feet. And so like for me, like if you're going into my footwear, start with like once or twice a week and then kind of make your transition more slowly, especially the older you are and the longer you've been in those types of shoes. But I do run into like some issues with kind of more the barefoot community, because we humans have created kind of a tricky situation for ourselves in the fact that most of the surfaces that we're on are very unnatural. Those kind of flat, even surfaces. You don't find those kinds of surfaces in nature. You're mostly finding like grass and soil and like rocky kind of areas.
right.
Whereas inside you have these wooden floors, these hard, flat concrete floors. So it's kind of like we put ourselves in this tricky situation to where we're constantly in contact with these kind of fake synthetic surfaces to the point where we kind of have to compensate for that like a little bit underneath the foot. So like that's kind of where I'm at as
Mm,
far as like the whole barefoot movement. I think you need something underneath your feet because that's just the situation that we put ourselves in.
yeah.
Obviously don't overdo it with like hokas or stuff like that, but
Right.
like you need I
Yeah.
think you need something underneath your feet when you're walking on these kinds of surfaces. So
Yep. So you start seeing all these, you went down the rabbit hole. You see you're sleeping better, you're recovering better. Um, like where did the moment click? You're like, I'm gonna, there needs to be a footwear. There needs to be, maybe grounding mats and blankets. Like, where did that kind of, not even a left turn, but there's that acceleration towards like fall in, like I'm gonna name myself the grounded athlete. Like where along that journey was like this is where it happened. And I'm all in on this practice.
yeah, I called it the grounded athlete because I was an athlete at the time, but I didn't mean it to be like more of an exclusive like just this is who I am. I called it the grounded athlete because I deeply believe that everyone has an innate athlete inside of them that if they nurture it, they take care of it. Everybody has that kind of athleticism in them.
Yes.
But yeah, when I started making the videos and everything like 5 years ago, I was like, okay, I really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy teaching people about this and obsessing over it. So I was like, well, it'd be cool to monetize it in some way to kind of get something from that and maybe eventually just do this for my whole life. And so I initially started working on a shoe, which is the shoe I just kind of recently started promoting a little bit. They're not out yet. They're very close to being out. It's the Aries groundwear, which is kind of the first conception that I had, this grounded sneaker. It's more of a casual athletic sneaker. And I've been working on that for like 5 years. Like ever since I started, it's been like a super long process. And in the meantime, while I was developing that shoe, the sandals came, Gaia grounding sandals, and now I kind of have this whole line, this Olympus earthwear. You have boots, you have sandals, sneakers, slide-ons, and eventually you'll have this
I
athletic
just bought a
sneaker.
pair last week.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. I'm excited to get you out a pair, dude. I think you'll really like them.
Yeah, yeah, they look chic, dude. So yeah, the footwear. Tell us about starting your own business. Like we love individualism. We love small local farmers on the podcast. So like anyone just out there doing himself. If you go to Rob's website, he's got about us and all the employees. He's like CEO is Rob, and then like chief communication officer is Rob with like a mustache, and like marketing manager is Rob with a hat. So how is starting your own business? Well, we should get that in a minute, but like tell us about the product. Like putting on your shoes is a way for people to stay grounded all day wearing your product. And how does that work?
Well, yeah. And before I answer that, let's define what grounding is. It's what grounding is it's being in electrical contact with the surface of the earth. And so when you're in electrical contact with the surface of the earth, the body potential essentially equalizes with that potential of the earth, right around zero, slightly negative. And so what you need to achieve that are conductive surfaces and conductive materials. And so, if you have a grounding piece of footwear, you need conductive materials in that footwear in order to ground you. And it's the same thing as being barefoot on the earth. And so all the footwear utilizes some kind of metal, aluminum, copper, and that will electrically ground you to the earth. And so it's just more so a convenient way to achieve grounding without being barefoot, because sometimes it's not always convenient, or some people just don't want to be barefoot all the time. And especially, when you have questionable terrain and all that, it's nice to have something on your feet.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question. So this
go
is,
ahead.
I think this is something, when you're extremely basic in your thought process obviously it's not basic, but like put your feet on the ground, do squats and lunges. Like it's not fancy, right? Like it's not a fancy thing. And then, we talk a lot about like then moving into vested interest, right? So it's so hard. Like, how do you take your passion? Obviously, you want people to learn about it. Obviously, you're passionate about your products with like the reasons for the grounding in them and what sets them apart. That's always a hard thing for me moving forward with anything I do is, making something now a product that I believe is better because of all the science and the electrical currents and all that. And then, moving to where it's a product that you're selling, right? It's like I always struggle so hard with that, because it's like, okay, these are basic principles. And then suddenly it becomes vested and you're like, damn it. Like here I now on this side. I don't want to be on this side. I want to be on this side. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's
I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah. Right. Because we talk about it all the time. Like there's so many, I've been doing a lot of reading with a company called Naboso. I don't know if you know that company or not, but they do, just more reading, not involved with them much. I have some of their products, but it's Matt, you have like those are the socks and the ball you have. So they work off of like 2-point discrimination. This is my terms, not theirs, but 2-point discrimination is what helps to light up the sensory system of the feet the most. So all of their technology, socks or balls to use to rub the bottom of the feet, have little spikes on them that are in a specific pattern that stimulates, the 2-point discrimination. And I love their educational content. And then I struggle with products because, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
I do. I'm certainly not a businessman. I'm more like, I like to make things. I like to create things. I like to create art for people. I like to teach people. And I never go out of my way to just, try and sell people things, because, at the end of the day, it's cool. It's cool if you buy this footwear and everything, but what I'm ultimately trying to sell is free. It's something that you don't need to buy anything in order to achieve. So it is, I do struggle at times trying to balance that kind of business side of things, especially the administrative side of things, which I don't like that much. And fostering that kind of creative side of me, which is what, brings everything that I do to life for me. So.
Yeah, I think I'm in corporate America in the Matrix, so I want to like shake both of you right now. It's just like, no, you are ethics and morality and value have actually been priced out of our quote unquote free market here in America. So it's just like you are providing something and you're living that experience. That's good enough in the value you're providing. So I'm glad like you have the business and you're creating it. The admin side is always going to suck, but yeah, I guess Allison's point, like you start to feel guilty because like now you're competing with the machine doing what they're doing, but that's what this fucking is. Like it's a war against the vested interest, and you're playing on their game, and you're trying to extract that by educating people. So if the money flows to you, um, yeah, like wake up, Allison, let's go. But
I'm not opposed. I'm just
yeah,
like not opposed. I'm not opposed to like I think it's neat, but I think it's like
yeah,
putting your craft into it and like
yeah,
the behind it. Like we don't want to lose. I totally agree with you. It's not a world where we can't live without shoes. It's not a world we can't live without shoes at all. Like
right,
it won't allow you inside if you don't have shoes on. Like
yeah,
there's surfaces. I'm similar. Like I love to be barefoot, but if I'm inside on a hard floor all day, my feet don't like that all day long. It's not. If
yeah,
I'm outside in the grass all day, I'm fine. But if I'm on man-made surfaces inside, I'm not. So I do
yep.
need a little cushion or my foot will hurt. So it's not blind to that, but I think it's interesting to, when those paths start to cross. That's all. I'm not
Yeah.
opposed.
Yeah. So Rob, you have the product, right? Like you have a product that kind of solves this issue. It is that issue. And being in an electrical contact with the earth isn't always feasible. And so now like your shoe provides like, maybe it's not the same as being on the beach or in a meadow, but like you're getting some of those microdosing it in certain effect, right? I think that's what your product's trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a blessing to be able to do what you love and make money doing it. So
Yeah.
that's how I try and see it every day when I wake up. It's very, very cool that I get to do this kind of thing.
Yeah. So talk about the business. You put the metals in there. Do you need to still be on some sort of conductive surface while you have the shoe on to get the benefits? Like if I'm on a ceramic floor at work, but I'm wearing the grounding shoes, am I technically grounded? Am I not? How does the product work in that way?
Yeah, and that's one of like the two top questions that people ask about grounding is how do I know if I'm grounded and where am I grounded?
Yeah.
And it all comes down to electrical conductors and insulators. And so what an electrical conductor is essentially this material that holds on to its electrons very loosely. And that means electricity can pass through it fairly easily, as opposed to an insulator, which holds on to its electrons very tightly. So electrical current can't get through it as much. But the main point is that you need a direct electrical connection to the earth. You can do that inside, you can do that outside, but it all comes down to what you're in contact with. So like let's take two examples that people kind of get confused about a lot. So the first example, somebody's out on concrete. And so, what it comes down to is you look up what is concrete made of. It's mostly mineral, it's mostly water. And so you look up on Google, is this a conductor? Yeah, it's mostly mineral and water, especially if you get it wet. It's very conductive. On the other hand, you have somebody who's standing on asphalt. That person looks up what asphalt's made of. It's mostly this petroleum-based polymer. It's very insulating. So like grounded on the concrete and insulated on the asphalt. You can also do it inside on grounding mats. I'm on a grounding mat right now. These are very useful, very convenient ways to do it. And, that's like one of the number one things I throw at people when they're just like, I don't have time to go outside and go do these things. In my head, I'm like, yeah, you do. But
right, of course
it's,
I do.
Throw this thing on your bed and sleep on it. That's, 6 to 8 hours right there. You don't have to think about it. Very easy, very convenient.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different ways, a lot of easy ways to get it done. But yeah, the whole question of where am I grounded and can I ground here comes down to electrical conductors and insulators, which is an easy Google search away.
Yep. And so how is the business going being every department in a solo business? The shoes I order, like you're making those all yourself.
Yes.
You're not outsourcing. I mean, I see you on the gram a lot, just like sewing and pressing and hammering in on the sandals. Is it the same for the shoes where it's handcrafted, or have you been able to outsource a little bit on that?
All of my stuff is made in such a way that it requires it to be handcrafted, because there's no kind of streamlined process to do what I'm doing as far as installing the metal and all that.
Yeah.
And so I have to, so all my sandals are made in-house here in the US. All of my shoes are made overseas I have two different groups that hand make the different types of shoes that I have. But nothing's getting made in China or anything, or made in like these huge freaking what do you call them, like these those like kind of factory what do you
Yeah,
call them, those lines or whatever.
procession lines. Yeah.
Nothing's
Exactly.
getting made like that.
None
It's
of
all
those, none of
getting,
that crap.
yeah, it's all getting handmade
Yeah.
by people that are super passionate about it, like I am, and that's it's very cool. But I wouldn't have enough time to be able to do it all myself. So it's nice to be able to do that. But yeah, there's really nothing else outside of that, though, that I'm giving to other people. I do all my own writing, I do all the blog posts, all the emails and everything. I have this thing where I just like to be in control of all these things, because I feel like people can pick that up when they feel like they're not getting things from me, and I just want to be in control of that as much as I can for as long as I can. So
Yep. So, okay. So more about the benefits. So grounding is, and again, a lot of this people should just be able to look up, like what's a conductive surface versus an insulated surface. Obviously, soil, grass, and sand are obviously the most nature-esque, but even something like concrete, people probably wouldn't naturally think so. So you start grounding, you're recovering better. It has something to do with performance, but so much going on in the country with one, stress, two, autoimmune disease, three, just like general inflammation. I assume grounding, it would be something that touches, and helps people deal with all of these things as a natural practice. Obviously, you have to have a comprehensive health program. You just can't be eating processed food and having a stressful life and then think grounding's going to solve all of it. But unless there's studies showing that it can overcompensate other bad habits. But are those kind of the three areas: stress, autoimmune, and inflammation that really have shown some signs of light in any of the studies, or again, marketplace feedback on what grounding can do for somebody?
yeah, there's a few things in what you said that I did want to I want to touch on. So one of the things is like, do you think grounding can help with this? And in every case, I can say yes, because what happens when you're grounding? You're basically restoring your body to its kind of default factory mode settings. And so what I like to call that is electrical homeostasis. And so when your body achieves electrical homeostasis, everything in the body literally works better. And so when people ask me, hey, do you think grounding will help with this certain condition? I'm like, yeah. If not directly, then indirectly, because it's literally going to regulate your entire body. So that's one of the things I wanted to touch on. Another thing is that, when I talk about the benefits and everything, and other people that talk about grounding, they talk about all these cool benefits and what happens when you ground. I try not to approach it from more of like all the little benefits side of things. Because you kind of miss the forest for the trees there. And so all these benefits that we can get into, they all stem from this thing this concept that I call the big three. And so these are the big three things that are happening when you ground that allow all these benefits to manifest themselves.
Yep.
And so the number one thing is that it increases the density of negative charge in your body. And that's through electrons coming from the earth into your body, infiltrating your body. And that contributes to overall electrical homeostasis. That is the natural state of your body. And now that allows it to operate efficiently, most optimally. So that's number one. And then number two is that it attenuates the excessive inflammatory oxidative stress response. And that's a big one. And that's a big reason a lot of these benefits are seen, is because, the number one killer worldwide is chronic non-communicable disease. And so that's cancer, that's heart disease, that's neurodegenerative, that's diabetes, all these things,
that's all your top 10 list right there.
Yeah. And that's low grade persistent inflammation, oxidative stress over a long period of time. That's how these diseases manifest. And there's other factors that lead to the pathogenesis of these diseases. But when you're trying to alleviate disease, when you're trying to think of ways to fix this whole problem of chronic disease, you kind of have to find the common denominator amongst these conditions. And two very common denominators amongst these conditions are inflammation and oxidative stress. So where grounding comes into the picture is more so the oxidative stress side of things. And so more often than not, people have excessive oxidative stress. And what is oxidative stress? It's an imbalance between the reactive oxygen species in your body and the antioxidants. So these reactive oxygen species are free radicals, as they're more, prevalent, known. These are these very reactive molecules that go around and they do a lot of damage to proteins, to lipids, to DNA. They cause mutations in the DNA. They're not good when they're in excess in the body. And more often than not, your body just can't produce enough of its own antioxidants to kind of fight off this excessive reactive oxygen species population. And so where grounding comes in the picture. So what are these reactive oxygen species looking for? They're looking for electrons. That's what stabilizes them. That's what an antioxidant does, is it gives electrons to these reactive species, and that allows them to neutralize. So, so if you really think about it, what are you doing when you ground? You're having this negative charge come into your body. What is a negative charge? It's these free electrons. And so what's happening there is you have these electrons being donated and neutralizing this excessive oxidative stress that's implicated in so many different conditions. So when you look at these conditions, you'll find inflammation where you find oxidative stress. So kind of by proxy, if we can influence one side of the coin, we can influence the other side of the coin. But where grounding really comes into play is that oxidative stress side of things. And I know that one was kind of long and drawn out, but that was number 2. And then number 3 is that, and this is the more esoteric side of this whole grounding thing, and I've written about this extensively, is that it charges the water protein matrix battery in the body. And that's a whole, it's old other topic, and we can get into it if you want. But those are the 3 core mechanisms that I believe are creating all these different benefits.
Where it makes sense on the oxidative stress thing is free radicals and all these things floating around in your bloodstream in your body is I'm like a big blueberry guy, and eating the foods, and the part of that is you have to eat them every day, right? Or you have to get the nutrients or those antioxidants every day in some shape, form, or fashion, which ties into, makes sense. Like you need to touch grass every day, you know what I mean? So that oxidative stress makes intuitive sense. But talk about that last one a little bit more with the water proteins. That's something I haven't heard. And again, I've been following you and listened to some of them, but I haven't dug down on that one too deep. And again, you can keep it, if you can keep it 15,000 feet, it doesn't have to be 30,000 feet, but
for sure. And that ties into what you mentioned too with the antioxidants. So I would like to mention this first. So in a lot of the literature that you'll read about antioxidant supplementation and consumption, it's not exactly like promising as far as consuming antioxidants and supplementing with them. It's a concept called the antioxidant paradox. Whereas, in a test tube, antioxidants work very well in combating reactive oxygen species or nitrogen species or chlorine or what have you. But when you introduce them to the body, they don't work as well, because you're dealing with so many more interconnecting pathways in the body. It's difficult to kind of train these supplements, these antioxidants, to get to where they need to be. And that leads us to the matrix. And this is a big distinction that I've written about. It's conducted antioxidants versus chemical antioxidants. So chemical antioxidants would be kind of your endogenously created antioxidants, glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and you have your dietary antioxidants, vitamin C, all these different things that you get from foods and fruits and all that. These chemical antioxidants have more barriers to entry as far as eliminating oxidative stress in the body, particularly when it comes to things like inflammatory barricades, which we can get to eventually. But these are very much different than conducted antioxidants, which are just free electrons from the earth. These essentially utilize this highway that your body is composed of called the matrix. And what is the matrix? It's essentially this semiconductive network that exists throughout your entire body. It consists of proteins, it consists of ground substance. It's really the only system in your body that has a direct physical connection to every cell in your body. And it's really a shame that, people in Western medicine don't really recognize it for what it is. And so all throughout your body, it's this highway of proteins from the extracellular matrix and the collagen fibers into the integrins that traverse cell membranes, into the cytoskeleton, into the nuclear matrix. It's really this highway that can be utilized for energy, information storage, information transfer. There's a lot of different ways that your body can utilize its matrix. So these electrons come into your body and they utilize this matrix to get to areas where it needs to be, particularly in these inflammatory barricades or areas of excessive oxidative stress. And they don't have to worry about, being digested and getting to where they need to be, which is what chemical antioxidants have to deal with. And so that's a big reason I think that conducted antioxidants are the superior antioxidant when it comes to battling oxidative stress. But what this matrix is, it's essentially your body's battery. And kind of just like anything else that has a battery, it can be depleted. And so one of the ways that you charge this battery is by being outside, being grounded, or grounding inside with a mat or something like that, and getting natural light on your body. Those are two of the biggest ways that this battery is charged. And I say esoteric, but it's a very intricate system that I've done a lot of research on, done a lot of writing about, and it's very, very cool. And I think that it should be more well known amongst people, and it's not considered its own system, I think, because it's so intertwined with literally every other system in your body.
That's what I was going to say. There's so much correlation between a lot of this stuff. And, I just like, I'm going to go back and watch that part that you just described to us, right? Just because, like, explaining the highway, because a lot of people would just be like, what do I need to do? And it's like, well, we could have ended the podcast 5 minutes ago. It's stand on earth, dude. That's it, But Allison, with her patients, it's like, you got to just squat, push, pull, and walk 10,000 steps a day. Like, we can end the session. So but people do need that supporting evidence, and esoteric or alternative medicine. We had Deepak Chopra's chief medical officer on talking about meditation and Ayurveda diet. There's still not, that's been practiced millenniums, and there's still like people questioning it or putting that woo. So like, I think the labels that it gets are, it's almost irrelevant but helpful when somebody can go. I mean, that's a very deep rabbit hole. I've been watching your dog like the whole time. It's awesome. It's so good.
We both smiled when he came on the
yeah, me and Allison were looking at each other when we went scurrying back in.
This is Professor Doom.
Yeah, he's the man, dude.
So I have the quick, I'll chime in. So I definitely have to go back and listen to that too, and just like the science behind it, and getting into it's not foreign language to me as it might be to you, Matt, but it's like getting into like the cellular level and all of that. So would you, in the most basic terms, with more grounding, does that creates more of a neutral to basic environment in our body, would you say, versus acidic? I think a lot of people that I've had conversations with, again, on a superficial level, because it's not my area of expertise, is I think most people understand that an acidic environment in our bodies is linked to things, is linked to higher inflammation, right? Like, that's the water crazes. That's the, get everything basic, get out of the acid, like all of that. But
that's why fasting too, right? Like that's
right. So would you say, in the most general terms, that grounding impacts, the acidity level, turning it basic or more acidic in our bodies? Is that something? Yeah.
That's a great point. And what is what is pH? It's essentially, it's your concentration of hydrogen ions. What are hydrogen ions? Well, they're protons. They're positively charged. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and you have this high pH in the body, this very acidic environment, it's an excess of positive charge. And that excess of positive charge needs to be neutralized. And that's easily neutralized by grounding. And so, and it's measurable with a multimeter. I have a multimeter here right next to me, and that's, you know, how I test all my grounding products and everything. So what happens when you electrically connect to the earth is your body voltage is going to drop down to roughly zero, about slightly negative, you know, in the negative 100 and negative 200 millivolts. And that is not only evident on the surface of your body, but it's affecting everything inside of the body as well. And that includes pH as well, and regulating the optimal pH for all of your systems. So yeah, I do believe that it has a lot to do with pH regulation and acidity and all that. So.
Gotcha. And then one other, thank you. I think that's helpful from that view. The other question, and that you've kind of answered that with the mats and all of that. As you're going, I'm Googling, and there's like bed sheets and mats, and there's all sorts of shit out there. It's great. So, because one of my questions was going to be, you know, like a barrier to a lot of people, I think in the most, I think when people hear, and I have been there, of thinking grounding is putting your feet on the ground, putting your feet in the environment, right?
Yeah.
And you know, all that. So the obviously a barrier up my way would be in the winter time. When, you know, I will do a quick run to my car and back on my driveway, but you know, it's a little bit more intense than a cold plunge when you're on asphalt that's freezing and there's snow and all of that. So how do you combat the, you know, the weather? Obviously I know one answer would be mats and all of that, but
yeah, there's I first of all, I totally get it. I'm in Iowa. I totally understand the winter. And, but yeah, there are a couple things I did want to touch on with that. So well, here's the grounding mat that I'm using right now. And so, you know, why do these things work? How did they work? So I don't know if that kind of ties into your question as well, because a lot of people are kind of confused as to why that works and why this whole, you can ground indoors. So all the electrical systems in buildings and all that, all these systems are electrically grounded to the earth. And the reason electrical systems are grounded to the earth is in the case of like a short circuit or a ground fault, or say, you know, lightning strikes your building. That's a lot of excess electrical energy that needs a place to go. And that's what the grounding connection does for these electrical systems, is it gives it a place to go. And so there's this, that third hole on the wall outlet, the bottom one.
Yeah,
that's
the prongs, and then the thicker.
Yeah, the little hole in the bottom, that's the ground connection. And that is connected to either a copper rod or a plate outside the building. And that's what gives that excessive electrical energy a place to go. And so when you use these mats, or when you use these blankets and what have you, they all connect to that ground connection, which is the same thing as, you know, being outside barefoot to the earth. And you can measure that too. And I always tell people, this is kind of an important thing to note when you do get grounding products. It's very important to test them. Not only important to test the products, it's important to test the wall outlets that you use. And this is like a $20 investment on your part. One of the investments is a multimeter. The other investment is an outlet checker. The outlet checker tells you if your grounding product is actually, or if your outlets are actually grounded to the earth. And then the other is a multimeter. The multimeter will tell you if your body voltage is changing when you're in contact with this product. Because if your wall outlets aren't grounded, it's not exactly you're not going to get the benefits of grounding, and you might even be hindering yourself, because this product that I'm using, it's conductive. It's made of conductive materials. And so the wiring in my home, you know, all the wireless communication devices that I have, the Wi-Fi router, and all these different things, they emit radiation. And so when that radiation comes into contact with something that's conductive, it essentially acts as an antenna. And so that's why it's important to test if these things are working, because if this thing is acting like an antenna, it's attracting all this ambient, non-native electromagnetic radiation, and you're coming into contact with it. While you're doing yourself a disservice, and it's not actually beneficial for you. It's not So very important to test these things when you're using them.
Yeah. Yeah. The health product market is definitely one where, even if it's a good product, if it's not in the right environment, it might not be beneficial to where you are. So, yeah, that's a good, like, kind of label forewarning for people, just to make sure you're not, like, you're thinking you're getting all these great benefits given where you live, urban city or whatever. So, definitely beneficial. And I've learned what that third hole, I'm like an electrician now. I've learned what that third hole on the wall is doing for us right now.
Awesome.
Cool. So, how does tell us about, like, your comprehensive training. So, like, you're grounding, you're taking care, but you're taking care of yourself, overall health. I think we mentioned you've done track, you're still competing, you do MMA. What does a week look like for you in terms of training to stay healthy and make sure, yes, you're grounding, but you're being robust and you have a great foundation. Are you heavy in the strength training? Are you more on the cardio side? Or, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you do both, but um, how's it look for somebody that's active and branding himself as the grounded athlete?
Yeah. Well, I'm not in the weight room that much, maybe like once a week, once or twice a week. I'm usually doing more so natural functional movements that are like relative to the movements that I do like on the mat or on the track.
Yeah,
I don't do like a ton of sagittal plane kind of, monoplane movements when I'm doing this weightlifting and stuff, but most of my training is in my actual sport. And it's surprising for a lot of people when they ask me, how do you get faster? And they're wanting like weight room, like exercises and stuff. It's like, no, you need to be sprinting. You need to be doing the actual movement. That's how you get better at the movement.
yeah,
But other than that, I mean, I I try and live, these three pillars of my life. Lots of grounding, natural light, and the other kind of flip side of that is avoiding unnatural light sources. And then number three is getting eating what's local, eating what's natural to my body, eating from an ancestral kind of perspective there.
yeah,
I think those will take people quite a long ways as far as longevity and health. But really just kind of, and this is really, when I talk to people about grounding, it's if you can kind of modulate the physics of your immediate environment, that's going to take you a long way as far as your health and your longevity.
yeah,
And the two biggest things that you can do for that are grounding and controlling your light environment. I would say those are your top two priorities, if you want to improve your health.
yeah.
But yeah, I do a lot to maintain that kind of natural lifestyle for myself. But at the same time, I can only do so much. And I tell people, don't stress about it, because if you stress about it, you're going to be thinking you have to do all these different things, all these different supplements, get all these different types of light bulbs, and
Yeah, man.
you end up worrying more than you need to. So just do your best to get the grounding and control your light environment to the best of your ability, and you'll be doing better than a lot of other
I've
people.
I've said this on like three different podcasts, with people across various disciplines, but somebody who's trying to get into an exercise routine who hasn't done anything. One thing that, and Allison's talked about it too with me, is like, I just say, have you dedicated 30 minutes a day to walking to get your steps in? Because that's like a gateway drug where you've dedicated the time and you've built a habit, and now you can layer on top of that. And while, if you're doing walking, you can do it outside in the sun and you can do it barefoot, right? So, like, you can knock out like kind of three birds with one stone, three birds with one stone, um, just by taking time for yourself. And again, walking is, people have often said it's also meditative too, if you're doing it without the headphones and or in nature. So, um, people don't like that stuff when you're like, it's that simple. It doesn't have to, because people are looking for that quick fix, or they're looking for an answer.
Yeah.
And grounding or eating natural whole real foods. I drive, 15 extra minutes to a local butcher that gets everything from a small farm here. I try to as much as possible. Again, not everyone's gonna be perfect with where they put their dollars, but you make the effort where you can. Sometimes it just doesn't sell in the over corporatized world of, this will solve your problem. It's an instrument and hopefully a vital one in grounding or eating whole real food and not processed food, where that it just opens up the floodgates for you to make better decisions in other areas. You start stacking those, you start stacking wins, So
Yes.
I'm sure that's probably where you saw it when you first got into grounding, right? Like you just started trying to get over an injury and it opened up this whole world for you.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting the perspective that this creates in people, in that it's something that is very simple, and it's very, and I have this thing where it's not sexy. It's not, it's not something I can buy, and it's not, this very advanced thing. And because it's just the things that are most ubiquitous in our environment and just highly prevalent things that we see every day, but we don't really think about, like sunlight, like grounding. It's just like in somebody's head, it's like not sexy, and I'm not really going to do anything about it, or
So true.
I'm not. Yeah, and it's
Or
just
get enough of it. They might even like
Yeah.
have a perspective they get enough.
yeah,
Like, "Oh, I'm outside." Like, you're not. You're
Yeah. Yeah. Or,
You're-
I'm on my feet all day at work and that's my activity. It's like, it's not, so, um, cool, man. So, hey, this has been really informative. How, I know we touched on the business. How is business? Like, are you growing? Are you on the right path? Is everything, are you on like, do you have a plan in your head that you're meeting and, overcoming whatever challenges are as one's growing?
Yeah. Over the last few years, I did kind of have to step away from, my business has always been, it's been popular and it's been fun. And, I haven't had a slow month since I started, which is great. But, for a few years there, I was writing that book, and that took me away from a lot of other things that I was doing, like making videos, doing a lot of podcasts.
The name of your book is
Earth and Water.
Earth and
It's called
Water.
Earth and Water. It's a short story of life's matrix, and literally everything we talked about today, everything that I've talked about in other podcasts, it's all stuffed in that book. So there's a ton of info in there
Yep.
about grounding, everything you possibly want to know about it. But now that I've finished it, I'm already kind of working on the next volume of it. But I'm allowed to kind of dedicate more time to, getting the shoe that I was working on for so long, and tending to other activities and projects that I have in mind, which is very cool. So, but that book took a lot from me, and that's why I took that hiatus, is because like it just burned out my brain, and so like I needed like a few month break. So
Allison's writing a book.
awesome. What are you writing about?
The current title, I'm not sure if it will be the title when it goes out, but is No Surgery for Me. So it's kind of a support for people who have kind of a chronic injury or chronic pain and are told they need surgery, like, I don't know, shoulder pain, knee pain, where, they're not changing lifestyle, they're not changing, whether could be just the habits of walking and moving, it could be just getting stronger in certain areas they're not working, and kind of buying into that. So all the stuff that goes along with that. I know Matt's wanting me to say, so I'm rehabbing my own, I tore my ACL, and it's about just 6 months, like now, like March 16th, skiing with my daughter. And lo and behold, I had been researching and working with a lot of people from Australia, learning how the ACL can actually heal, like it can actually come back together and the two pieces can become one again. Which if you Google right now, the first thing that will come up will be like, no, it cannot ever heal. So working through like understanding bracing and positions to do that. So I tore my own to try it out, and and here I am, and it is healing and it's coming back together.
Your own testimony.
So,
Yeah,
a major.
yeah.
I was already like into the stuff and into that, and seeing clients who maybe didn't want surgery, maybe couldn't afford surgery, maybe couldn't, maybe it just didn't fit with their lifestyle right then. And then they don't need it. And COVID showed that too. So, just all the things that go around with that is, like people judge you on that. Medical providers will be like, no, you're crazy. I'm going to a gala in a couple weeks. And the main reason I'm going is because it's going to be just latent with orthopedics and just waiting. I just have been quiet in my little world. But just because they'll be like, no, there's no way, there's no chance. And like, it is like, these are my MRIs. This is the pieces. Like, another 6 months, it will actually look like one again. I'm running, I'm playing with my children. Yeah.
A couple things.
Yeah.
Do you have like a deadline for yourself is number one?
I just met with a company who I'm going to get like an editing coach because I am what they deem as a pantser, which is I just write whenever, like, I have like my outline of chapters, but I jump. So if something strikes me today, a conversation with a client, like I'll go write another blurb in that chapter and back and forth. So I definitely am somebody that needs accountability and somebody with me. Matt's like, yes.
As the guy who like reaches out to all our guests and organizes the podcast, I can confirm that like I just need to tell her like, hey,
yeah. So
I was like, I text her the morning of, I was like, you do remember we have a podcast today. So
that's where I am. I'm about probably 50% written. But I'm just kind of holding the writing process until I get somebody who's going to guide me a little bit. Just like fill this in more. I need more information here. Like it's stupid, but that's what I need because I'm just all over the place. So
have you experimented with peptides at all?
I haven't. So I haven't personally. I'm definitely like in the collagen world and stuff like that. Peptides I haven't. And PRP, I haven't. There is a reason I haven't. And most of that is because a lot of people who I think will be going through this, like I want them to think of this as like a low cost option where they're not having to search all that. So I probably will. And, I've been a doc I work with. We've talked about the PRP and definitely like peptide stuff. I'm into it. I've read, I'm read in it, but as my own experiment from the clinician side, I want people to see that they don't need that.
That's a good point. Yeah. Awesome.
Be nutritious and all that. And again, like I'm not opposed. Like I've traveled 3 hours away to get PRP for my dogs, like in studies and true statements of, with little children, but I believed in it and nobody around here did it. So I would do it and he had great results. And so I believe in it, a lot of that stuff. But I'm intentionally probably taking the harder road on it just to make sure, what I preach to my clients, they could follow through with. So
that's awesome. That's a great approach. That'll be
but I'm going to add the grounding in. That's it. I am very often, but I think,
but I just, the humor, like this was on Allison's, like this was, 70% of her patients are ACL patients. We did 3 episodes. We had a leading research author on it from Australia on this new protocol of non-surgery. And then like 2 weeks later, after our 3rd episode, she blew her ACL. So she like gave it like a real time, but she's writing the book. So, how many words was your book and how, like, again, you said that drained you. So, I don't know if Allison's in the same thing, but cause she's doing it as,
you're sick.
I had to split mine into 2 different books. So there's volume 1, volume 2. It came out to be, right around like 800 pages.
I just got drained.
And just like, it was a nightmare kind of, finalizing everything and all that. But, really, it's a very rewarding process, especially when you know that what you're working on is going to help a lot of people out there. And I know a lot of people have already reached out to me. They're like, this is amazing. And I love it. And you've really helped me. And it's a great feeling. And so that's something to definitely look forward to when you finish yours. So
did you self-publish or did you go in a publisher?
I went through Barnes and Noble. It was self-publishing deal. And even then it's just like such a pain in the ass process going through all the hoops and everything. And so, but it's very cool.
Which is like the upfront cost of having people help you manage self-publishing and then more royalties or I don't necessarily want to lose my tone. I don't want to lose, I don't want to necessarily go publishing and I'm not for censoring what I want to say. So if you lose any of that,
And
Never.
yeah, for sure, if you're, I mean, if you're writing a book, especially if you're going on like a place like Barnes and Noble, like you're not gonna make a lot of money doing it. So people that are writing books, you know, usually they're not in it to make a ton of money, which
Right.
it's kind of
Yeah.
why I books too. So,
Yep.
but yeah, it's a very, very fun process. It's very rewarding. And when you finish, you know, as much as you might have hated it doing it in the process, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh, I really miss like, you know, diving into all that stuff
It's
and all the fun.
therapeutic, right? Like
Yes, it
I
is.
write on my own for, I don't have any plans to write a book, but just writing,
Mhm.
I love it. So I'm sure like having that right there, it's like,
Mhm.
I emptied all that out, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Um, Very cool. And you know, the other thing we're grounding, just to bang home right before we wrap up, is like a lot of this stuff is like in the alt health or whatever you want to call it, esoteric. I don't even like bringing up those words, but a lot of the stuff that's out there that is not beneficial. Sometimes things can like hurt people. Like there is no, even if the studies are murky or whatever, there is literally no downside to grounding.
Yeah.
Right. So like just doing it and having that mindset, even if you don't believe it, even if you don't feel any different, like there's nothing that is going to be detrimental to you for taking 10 to 20 minutes out of your day and literally touching grass. And if anyone doesn't think there's any benefit to that, I just like I would be like, but that's the whole point. Like a lot of the stuff, if you try some of these new trendy things or these new health products or something that's all natural, sometimes there's a downside to that, and it's actually the reverse of what they're promoting. There's literally nothing that is going to hurt you from trying grounding, right? And then you have all the knowledge that you dropped on us today. So, um,
Yeah, let's say, you know, for some reason I'm wrong. None of this means
right,
anything. None of it works for your body. You spent more time outside. You spent more time in nature. Overall, net
right.
positive, you know.
It's all over net positive. So, all right, Rob, you're the grounded athlete on Instagram. You're a grounded athlete on Twitter or X.
Yeah, it's Earth Poppy on Twitter.
Earth Papi.
Yeah, Earth Bobby on Twitter, and then you know if you do follow me, fair warning to you. I
Oh, you're
post
the
a lot
best,
of
dude.
education. Yeah,
You're the fucking best, man.
I
No
post I
warnings.
post
Yeah, you need to
Give him
have a.
warnings. Let him give his warnings.
Okay, go ahead.
yeah.
Give your.
I mean, I post. I give most of my stuff is educational stuff. I post all my educational stuff, but people have to realize that this thing is also me, and so I do tend to post a lot of funny stuff, a lot of more the meme side of things, and I just like to have fun with it. So
Yeah, dude,
that's
I've
yeah.
like we're here to have a good like we're here to have a fucking good time.
Yeah.
I've opened up the flow. I was not on social media till like 2-3 years ago. I just didn't want any part of it because I didn't have anything to participate in. The podcast kind of forced me down that road, and it's opened up opportunities like this where you realize um, you can network, you can grow a community. You don't have to just share, look at how awesome my life is when you're depressed on the back end. Like you don't have to participate in that side. There's a whole community based,
Yeah.
business based, like-minded based community, and part of that is having a good time and laughing. And so you like a lot of when I first joined, like a lot of when I came across yours, like you've inspired me to like just have some fucking fun, dude, and like just make jokes about the absurdity of what's going on in the country, the absurdity of the health space, health influencers who like have no background in this stuff. I always joke, like Allison's the expert on this. I'm just a health enthusiast. I was in healthcare many years ago. So all I'm doing is I just share my workouts. I don't recommend anything. And I just say, you guys can watch me work out, or you can, use that as like some sort of motivation. Like, geez, I keep just watching my friend work out. Maybe I should do this stuff. So your feed is the best. No warnings. Like you just have a sense of humor. Don't be fucking uptight.
Yeah, exactly.
So good stuff, dude. I really appreciate you making the time. You stand for everything that when I reach out to guests. You're an individual, you're building your own business. It's just health related. So we appreciate making the time. I know you do 1,000 of these. You don't have to do these. So I appreciate you making time with us. And I look forward to releasing this one to our community.
Yeah, I always appreciate, going on people's podcasts, and I do my best to try and get this message out there, and it's been a pleasure talking to you guys, and I'm always thankful for the opportunity that people actually want to talk to me about this very simple thing that surprisingly not a lot of people know about. So
Yep. And we appreciate huge dog family. So we appreciate the cameos throughout. Yeah. They're like
from Professor Doom. Okay.
Professor Doom. He's the man, dude. So this has been great. Follow Rob everywhere. We'll release this in about a week or so. And we'll over tag you with no expectation of you resharing, but just to let you know we're putting your name and face out in the universe. And keep doing your thing, man. It was great having you. Everyone can like and subscribe down below, and see everyone on the next episode. Appreciate it.